Now, the Tourism Leadership Conference is wrapping up today in Sun City. The conference saw stakeholders across the sector discussing growth opportunities for the year ahead. Ahmed Kajee is there and joins us now live. Ahmed, a very good morning to you. We know that tourism contributes a significant chunk to South Africa's GDP, in fact, outperforming agriculture and construction. As this event comes to a close today, what have been some of the most important take-homes, especially looking at how significant tourism is as a job creation driver in the country?
Yes, good morning. Thanks very much. A large chunk of what we had seen yesterday from different breakaway sessions and from the keynote address from Tourism Minister Patricia de Lille was a lot around the growth within the sector. There is the first element of the Tourism Equity Fund. That proposal is being made by the Minister to Cabinet. That will have a cash injection of 1.2 billion rand coming into the economy. That will be greatly welcomed by many of the stakeholders, the tour operators, within the sector as well. And speaking of tour operators, a large chunk of what we had seen during last year's conference was the fact that their tour operating licenses weren't being processed fast enough. And unfortunately, there was perhaps for the Departments of Home Affairs and the Department of Tourism, lots of backlash coming through from those tour operators to say they would like to start their businesses, especially as they recovered from the pandemic. And those processes have subsequently been sped up over the last 12 months or so. So those tour operating licenses will be expedited, and many of those operators can get their licenses ongoing, and those operations can continue. From the private sector as well, Minister de Lille spoke a lot around those public-private partnerships being important for the tourism sector. And speaking towards that, they said that partnership was very strongly founded in the development of a safety app for many tourists coming into South Africa and domestic tourists as well, in line with private security companies and private app developers in partnership with the Department of Tourism. There's an app called the Secura app. This links many tourists to different destinations and perhaps points of attraction, but more importantly also towards police stations and private security companies that's coming through from the public, a private point of view. And then just finally also from the Department of Home Affairs, many people had been raising concerns around the speed in which their visas were being approved, and for some of the visa-free people, visa-free countries who are going to be coming into the country, the minister saying safety is the most important part of the reasons behind some of those delays. He says each person coming into South Africa needs to be vetted to make sure that they are not going to be a security threat in any way or form to the government and to the people of South Africa. That's just some of the points which we had seen yesterday. Coming through into today, there will be a feedback session for some of the resolutions which have been taking place over last year's conference, and to just see what has been implemented. One of those was the public-private partnerships, so that security app is something which will be mentioned amongst many others, which is expected to take place probably between around 11 and 12 before the final wrap-up session.
With safety coming to the forefront in terms of selling brand South Africa, what were the other aspects that were highlighted when it comes to the perceptions around South Africa and essentially telling a good story about the country to attract tourists?
Yes, so a large part of that came through from the national government, but a big part of what we had seen was coming through from the city of Cape Town and the Western Cape. We had spoke to James Force yesterday, the MMC for tourism in the city of Cape Town, and he said one of their partnerships to bring people into South Africa and into Cape Town specifically was a partnership with Kenya Airways. He said they were now obviously with their fleet of Kenya Airways flying out to 40 countries. The partnership between Kenya and coming through into South Africa, that partnership to ensure that the city of Cape Town is going to be part of all of their in-flight magazines. This will then allow anyone who happens to be flying on those Kenya Airways flights in and around the world to those 40 countries where they fly out to, they will have access to see what exactly South Africa has to offer, what the city of Cape Town has to offer, and in this way of form bring in that tourism in to the city. What we had seen is is those strategic partnerships coming through from the Western Cape. They just now have United Airlines flying into Cape Town International, and Delta Airlines flying into Cape Town International Airport directly from the United States. And then Air Tanzania and Air Mauritius are also now making their direct flights back into OR Tambo International Airport. So that aspect around bringing people into the country has been increased, and this goes two ways as well. For many of the local airlines flying out into regional countries, FlySafair are going to be expanding their routes to different parts of the continent from next month. This also then means that there is an open market for many of those markets coming through. For many of the tourists coming through from those countries may want to be flying FlySafair or perhaps South African Airways back into South Africa. So those tourism numbers, which are now exceeding pre-COVID numbers, is hoping to see an increase, especially heading into this month now as the country observes Tourism Month, and then heading into the November-December holiday season, and then into the middle of January before the start of the new year. So that's something which will be expected through from the tourism sector, both on the private and the public sector, and then also within each province across the country.
Very well, Ahmed Kajee. Let's leave it there for now, as of course we track the final day of the Tourism Conference 2023 out in Sun City in the north.